Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Okay. We did a little bit more shares because we expected maybe 2.5 in a year plus things that are to be discussed. Although the range is the same.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is Policy Talks, formerly known as the Public Affairs Roundtable, as the Town Hall Meeting, and as the Legislative Update. But our millennial Director of Government Affairs, Kel McDowell, came up with a name that we feel like fits what we do here. And so in the future, you will be seeing this event called the Policy Talks. And so we're happy to have you with us here at Columbia State this morning. Got our audience on Channel 3, WCTV, and we think we have WAKM as well with us. And we appreciate all of you being with us this morning. Our special guest today, back as we always do the first of the year, have our legislative delegation from Williamson County. I shouldn't say headed by, but going by seniority now, our Senate, have to stop and think, Jack, Majority Leader, and representing the 23rd District here in Williamson County, Senator Jack Johnson. Next to him, our 63rd District State Representative, Glenn Cassida. Next to him, 65th District Representative, Sam Whitson. And Brandon Ogles from the 61st District, our newest member of our delegation with us. Brandon, glad to have you. The beard looks good. And Glenn and I are following along many steps behind you there. So just as a refresher, Jack, in addition to being Speaker of the, Majority Leader, I'll get these titles straight by the time we're done here in April or May. But in addition to that, very important and influential spot in our state Senate. You're on, I'm cheating here, but you're on the Senate Calendar Committee, Senate Commerce and Labor Committee, Finance, Ways and Means Committee, Joint Pensions and Insurance Committees. All of those are pretty important. The Finance, Ways and Means may be the most important, though. We'll get into what you see coming from those, but what do you see being a member of those committees, how you can help Williamson County maybe the most?
Okay, thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. Great to be back with you. It's another year. It seemed like yesterday we were just here. It's hard to believe it's been several months, but so thanks, Dave. So in serving my capacity as a majority leader, it puts me in a number of spots. And one of the things that made me very interested about serving as running for majority leader within my caucus is the fact that I sponsor all of the governor's legislation. Okay. So I'm the prime Senate sponsor of the governor's legislative package, including the budget. So the $38.6 billion state budget, I'm the Senate sponsor of and need to make sure that gets passed in the Senate. No pressure at all. There's no pressure in that. But that has put me in a new capacity that I'd not really been that much a part of prior to that. 10 years prior to that, I was chairman of the Commerce and Labor Committee, which I'm still on. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm really enjoying getting into doing a deep dive into the budget and the budget process. So leadership, majority leader for me, you by default, you serve as a member of the Finance, Ways and Means Committee, which is the budget committee. We decide, what we spend our tax dollars on. And similar process in the House. So I officially meet weekly, speak much more frequently than that with the governor, with his staff about his legislative initiatives. Big day yesterday. I know we don't talk a lot about social issues here, but a big day yesterday with his pro-life announcement. I will be the prime Senate sponsor of that legislation. Now, I may work with other senators on that legislation, so I may have other senators that sign on second line, and I have them carry the bill in committee and work with it in various capacities. So we certainly share in that responsibility, but my name will be top line on that. So I guess the biggest change for me, becoming majority leader, last year was my first year in that role, is getting to work with the governor. And we talked about this last year, but coming into last year's legislative session, we had a brand new governor, we had a brand new Senate majority leader, and we had a brand new House majority leader. And the House majority leader carries all the governor stuff in the House. So we were all new to our positions. But I think we had a very successful first session, and we're going to build and grow on that this year.
Great. Glenn Cassida, you're now regular member of the House.
Yes.
You're On the, you're vice chair of the Naming, Designating, and Private Acts Committee.
Yep.
That could be dangerous, but.
It is going to be dangerous.
You're on our Transportation Committee, the State Committee, the Department of Agencies and Department and Agency Subcommittee.
Yes.
Any priorities there that we'd like to know about?
You know, and I was going to tease you, but it kind of dovetails. My new role has been the guy with blonde hair and a blonde beard. I have, this past week, I've sat down with two interest groups came to me and was just seeking strategy on how to pass their agenda. And so because of my age and because of my experience, I've regularly meet with members on helping them, directing them on how to pass their bill and how things work down there. So I kind of enjoy my senior citizen role in the legislature. But I'm excited to be on transportation that Sam chairs one of the committees of. And I've got a couple of DUI bills I'm working on that I think will make an impact with the state of Tennessee on helping us combat driving under the influence and the deaths and the lives that it ruins and takes.
Good. Sam Whitson, District 65, you're the chair of the Infrastructure Committee. I want you to tell us a little bit more about that, but you're on the Transportation Committee, the Health Committee, the Finance, Ways and Means Committee again, similar to our our majority leader. Somebody write that down. Right? Get that straight. And Finance, Ways and Means Subcommittee. I think many of us are very interested in transportation, but what does the Infrastructure Committee that you chair?
Well, thank you, Dave. Yes, it's there's two subcommittees in the Transportation Committee full. There's safety, and Glenn created that, which really helps us out kind of so we can focus on particular issues. And mine is the Infrastructure Subcommittee, and Glenn made me chairman last year of that. And I work closely with Chairman Dan Howell, who is the chairman of the full Transportation Committee. Dan has been meeting a lot with the governor and the other members to make sure that we keep infrastructure in the forefront as we go forward. Not just roads, but we're talking about broadband and rail and such. So that, I think you'll see a lot of push from our committee members to the administration. This is an opportunity to take advantage of our economic conditions in the state to do one-time projects, catch up and on these projects that we have out there. Still a lot to do on the Improve Act, but we're blessed in Williamson County. I think we have most of our projects now listed on the 3-year plan. That means that it will be done. Now, it doesn't mean it'll be done in 3 years, but it will be done because there's a lot of steps in that process. So and I'm, again, first time the Speaker, Sexton, appointed me to the Finance Full and Subcommittee. There's a lot of work on that committee, and it's like Jack said, you have to, dive deep into the details, and look forward to doing that. And 5 committees, it's going to be a full-time job this session.
Sounds like it. Brandon Ogles, you're on Judiciary, Criminal Justice Subcommittee, Finance, Ways and Means Committee. So we've got that committee covered well. You're on the subcommittee there as well, and the Joint Pensions and Insurance Committee. What do you think are the notable things that you might be able to accomplish as a member of those committees?
Well, also the big surprise was getting placed on probation and parole by the governor, which is his task force, which I think they were a little surprised because, something we say up there all the time is vote your district, vote your conscience. I've got a little different perspective on some of the issues in criminal justice because I do represent northern Williamson County, and some of the issues we're looking at statewide as far as recidivism and all that. People from Brentwood and North Williamson County don't want crime from Nashville coming down into Williamson County. So some of these numbers that we're trying to fix and some of the data we're trying to adjust, people in my district are calling it catch and release. We don't want people that are committing violent crimes and sexual crimes to be released early. We want them to stay in jail. We want them to do their time. So that's a committee I've been put on, spending a lot of work there, and really enjoying the work. It's very fulfilling. Right. We do have some crisis in Tennessee. There's some numbers that are dismal as far as crimes against women, Some of the related crimes with firearms are pretty bad in the state, so we've got a lot of work to do there. I will say that, you know, that topic is getting a lot of press, but that does not mean we're trying to let bad people out of jail. People with drug addiction, failure to pay some fines, stuff like that, mental health, we're trying to get them help quickly, get them in the system, get them out. But that's an effort to focus our time on the hardened criminals, the people that are hurting you, the people that are breaking into your house, hurting children, hurting women. That's the focus on some of the reform, and that's the part that I'm really focused on, and kind of, I would say grumpy may be a good word. It's probably more.
You haven't smiled yet this morning.
Well, I'm aggressive on that. I'm not a pacifist when it comes to violent crime or people that hurt women and children. I don't have any tolerance for that.
Yeah.
People in my district don't as well. So we're going to hammer down on that as best we can and be sure that the governor and the whole state of Tennessee hears Williamson County and where we stand on that.
Yeah. Well, the governor's stated his desire to, that wasn't something I expected to get to this morning, but he's expressed a desire to, it looks like, soften things up a little bit, put more emphasis on rehabilitation and that sort of thing instead of punishment. So,
well, I think we've got a little bit of a messaging issue there. I wouldn't say it's a softening. What we know by studying the data is actually, if you come into the prison system, the criminal justice system, and you've committed, say, a drug offense or a vehicular, a moving offense with your car, something like that, the longer you stay in the system, the more violent you do become.
okay.
So the focus is to actually get you help outside the system, get you back employed, let you actually contribute to society and pay your taxes, pay your fines, pay your debt quickly, get out of the system, do what you're told to do, which is report, pass a drug test, and then get back to work and don't come back. But I wouldn't say it's a softening, it's more of a active engagement and getting people to do the right things, getting them employed, empowering them with the tools to thrive in society rather than get by or be in the shadows or take from other people. I wouldn't call it softening. I would call it more of a realignment.
I don't know much about prisoners, but they say the longer, if you put a dog on the chain, the longer he stays on the chain, the meaner he gets. So maybe there's a correlation there. I don't know. But I apologize for that. But the governor has kind of stirred things up right off the bat this year. He came out earlier and announced that he was going to accept refugees in the state of Tennessee. Apparently a surprise to most of us. And has since gotten with the lieutenant governor, it looks like, and they've crafted a bill to pretty much stop abortions after the detection of a heartbeat. But yet he hasn't come out specifically with a major initiative for the year that I've heard yet, Jack. The last year we had, help me out, well, 1 year it was the gas tax, 1 year it was the Medicaid expansion, and last year it was the ESAs, the vouchers. Is there a major initiative, or is this the major initiative that?
Well, I think there's a number of initiatives. I think you mentioned ESAs. ESA was one small part of a fairly comprehensive education reform package that we passed for the state of Tennessee last year, including expanding vocational technical education, the GIVE Act, the governor's investment in vocational education. So now, ESA sucked all the oxygen out of the room, but really when you look at the scope of the legislation we passed last year, it was fairly comprehensive. ESAs was a fairly small part of that. This year, I think, back on what Brandon was saying, you're gonna have a couple of things. One is going to be, probably the biggest will be criminal justice reform. and Brandon did a great job of kind of touching on it. I'll add a couple of things just for color. Many of you in Williamson County are familiar with our recovery court program here in Williamson County. We have one of the best recovery courts, and that's for DUI court, it's drug court, veterans courts, for to provide, I guess you could call it specialized, attention for a specific type of offense. And we have all attended drug court graduations numerous times and support it. And full disclosure, my wife is a judge. She's part of that. She's very passionate about it as well. But what you see is when someone goes through a 2-year drug court program, the recidivism rate, I think, is something less than 20%. The recidivism rate for someone who goes to prison for 2 years is 80%. Okay, so we know it works. We know that someone who goes through an intensive drug court treatment, drug court is over about 2 years. It involves, you have to have a job, you have to be subjected to regular drug tests, you go to treatment, you do some jail time, you get some shock incarceration, so you get a little taste of it, so you know what it's like to do it, but you're more or less able to work a job, raise your kids, be at home, cook dinner, help them with their homework, that type of thing. So it's not only is it better, and by the way, we don't have to pay for a prison bed, right? So it is truly a win-win-win-win-win all the way across the board. Now, we're doing it quite well in Williamson County, but other parts of the state don't have the resources, don't have the ability to do it. So that's just one piece of criminal justice. As Brandon said, it's being smart on crime. It's not about being tough or soft on crime. It's about being smart. Because at the end of the day, when someone commits an offense, what's the outcome? Don't do it again, right? Go back and be a productive member of society. Learn your lesson. That's the outcome. And we have 95% of the people in our prisons today are going to get out. Only 37% of those are going to have any type of supervised release, meaning they flatten their sentence, they get handed a bag with their clothes back in it, and there's the door, and you send them out. And guess what? About 80% of those people are going to be back in the prison. So criminal justice reform, it's hard to get it into a soundbite. Governor Lee has introduced, and the bills are in my office now. They're not publicly available yet, but they soon will be. There's 5 bills that are being drafted right now, have been drafted by the governor's office. My attorneys are reviewing them right now. We'll have those jacketed and filed soon, and they'll be out there, and we can talk more about it. But I expect that to be, if you want to say kind of what's going to be the governor's big push, right. I'd say criminal justice reform, continued education reform. You're going to see some more things change with regards to both K-12 and higher education, and then obviously the pro-life initiative that he introduced yesterday.
Okay.
Dave, let me piggyback on that too, because there's a couple of things he initiated last year that he will continue to push this year that will greatly benefit at least my part of the district: broadband expansion and vocational education expansion. Okay. We've got to bring broadband to the rural parts of the state. And southeast Williamson County, and I guess for that matter, southwest Williamson County, it brings business and it brings prosperity to everybody. And so it will continue that initiative, and that's very important. And then, of course, vocational education. We've got too many young people going to college, getting a degree in philosophy or things that doesn't benefit them career-wise, and they come out with a $100,000 debt, where an electrician or a plumber is making $100,000 a year, and we desperately need those. So those are 2 things that we will continue to expand on and help bring prosperity to the rural parts of the state. Tennessee overall is one of the top states in the union on growth of income and growth of jobs and new business. We're one of the top states of inflow of population and inflow of business because of the policies of Governor Lee and Governor Haslam, the conservative leadership in the House and Senate, and we're going to expand on those as well.
We're getting totally off my agenda here, but Sam, you spent a lot of energy on the Katie Beckett bill last year. I understand there's some follow-up coming on that program.
Yes, it's at, right now it's at the federal level to be approved. They need to help us make sure that the money's spent correctly. Yes. And so, but we're waiting for a decision from the federal government before it's fully implemented. But it's on track, and we expect it not to be a problem. If I could just piggyback real quick, we do have a success story on criminal justice here in our county, and that's the juvenile court that we have with Judge Guffey and her team. For instance, several years ago, we had 200 children in DCS custody from our county. Now we're down to 6 through an aggressive probation program that they have put together. They need some more help on that. But again, and they need a new facility too, funded by the county. And so I noticed Tom's taking notes real good. But anyway, again, there is success stories out there that we can build on and reinforce that success when it comes to criminal justice reform.
Right. Circling back to the budget, Jack, it appears that you gentlemen and ladies of the House and Senate have about $350 or $400 million more this year to spend because of the growth in the economy in Tennessee and the increase in tax revenue. Some of that gets sucked up into automatic programs, I guess you would call them, like the BEP and so forth. How much discretionary money will you all actually be making decisions on how to allocate?
So yeah, you're exactly right. The normal growth for things that we don't have really any control over, non-discretionary type things, like TennCare, okay? We have to put a certain amount of money into TennCare, which is our state match, we receive the federal dollars. BEP, if we're going to fully fund the BEP formula, which we have done, we don't have to do that, but we've made a commitment that we are. That's fully funding public education and fully funding the BEP formula. You're looking at about $300 million before, just in non-discretionary increases, before you even start talking about teacher raises, state employee raises, or other types of things. So you're right, it does get eaten up. Having said that, though, I want to make sure everybody knows the state of Tennessee right now is in the best fiscal condition it has ever been in. Our rainy day fund last year, we bumped it up to 1.1 million. Billion, thank you, 1.1 billion. It does matter. Those extra 3 zeros at the end make a big difference, I have found.
There's about 999 more million in that,
yeah.
in that
So
number.
$1.1 billion. That puts us at about 7% of our state budget. We had set a goal that we wanted to be at about 8%. And so we're getting very close to that, but we've kind of made an agreement among House and Senate leadership. Let's go ahead and try to get that up to 10% of our state budget. And so we'll continue to do that. Anytime we talk about the budget, and I know I always see people's eyes start glazing over here, but this is critically important. We have recurring and non-recurring surpluses, okay, or deficits. And recurring means like getting a raise at your job. Okay, you can count on that next pay period, the following pay period, on and on and on. Non-recurring money is, your Aunt Edna passes away and leaves you $10,000 in her will. Okay, you can't count on that every year. But because of the conservative way we plan for our budget, and we base our budget on revenue projections, we're very conservative with that. So if we project that we're going to have growth of 2.8% in the coming fiscal year, and we base our budget on that, and then revenue comes in at 3.2%, well, then we collected more than we budgeted. And I've had people say, you're overtaxing because you have these surpluses. Well, we could do just the opposite, and we could budget, at the high end of that range and then come in shorthanded. I don't think you want us to do that. So in most recent years, we've come into the fiscal year with an over collection. We book that as one-time money. The reason that's important is because when we look at things like the 4th building for Columbia State, infrastructure capital projects, these are one-time expenditures. And this will be our 3rd fiscal year in a row we have not borrowed a dime in the state. It's never happened in our state's history before. So in years past, if we wanted to build the 4th building for Columbia State, or we wanted to build a new office building or a building at MTSU or University of Tennessee, we would build the building and bond it out over 20 years, right? And we'd make payments on that. We've been paying cash for all of that. We've been writing a check for all those capital expenditures. So our debt continues to drop. We're paying cash for those things, and it's just continuing to build and strengthen our financial position. So you're right. Your question was how much discretionary over and above those. Well, if you add in state employee raises, teacher raises, some things that are not required, but that we want to do, we'd like to plan to do, it eats up that recurring surplus pretty quickly.
Okay, so you won't put a number on that figure.
I want to make sure I said Judge Sharon Guffey. If I said Megan Guffey, I made a mistake.
Did it? See her here, she could probably tell us. But,
And Dave, the reason what Jack just outlined, very good, Professor, how that applies to us on our day-to-day lives is states that are highly in debt, it has the effect of driving up the cost of living. It costs more to do business in those states. So if you live in California, and the average income is probably close to 70,000 per household, and it's about 49 here. Your money goes further in Tennessee because your taxes are lower and the cost of goods and services are lower. So that's why it's important to Tennesseans, is because you can live here a lot less and a lot more economically than you can in those other states like New York, Illinois, and California, just name a few.
right. Well, that tells us, I presume we're going to continue to see the hall tax go away. Things like that. Our struggling financial advisors and attorneys might see a little relief on the professional privilege taxes. Is that in the works, or?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation, but the problem with the professional privilege tax is for financial advisors, and I used to be one, is that there, I think, are 150,000 financial advisors from outside the state that are paying that. And then there's only about 10,000 or 20, don't hold me to those numbers, but it's something like that are, and our feeling is we don't really necessarily feel that strongly compelled to make those out-of-state people not pay that. So what we're trying to do is, constitutionally though, we cannot apply it to out-of-state people and not in-state people. That's specifically to financial advisors. We're working on it though.
I think we can
We're working on
continue
it.
to pay it. So.
We love you, Dave, though.
It's just the attorneys I'm worried about, you know.
The lobbyists are still paying as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes, lobbyists still paying.
So, anyway, Jack, Senator Johnson, you were kind enough to share with me the publication from the Tennessee Republican Caucus, Senate Republican Caucus, your preview of the 111th General Assembly, and I figured out right quick that there are a lot of things we're not going to get to this morning unless y'all want to stay till lunchtime. But let's focus for a little while on education and talk about all the education issues that are expected to come up. But first of all, let's talk about the most important one to us, and that's the Columbia State Building number 4. Dr. Smith, are you with us? Come around here. And of that 350 or 400 million, 27 million of it needs to come here because Columbia State needs one more building. Is that right, Dr. Smith?
Always, yes. We're very excited, and earlier, some of you didn't see it, but we did have the new design up, and we're working heartily on that. So if the funds do come, that we can come out of the ground or really start on it in July. But a new feature has been added to it, which aligns with what the governor's doing with his GIVE Act and the like, and that is in vocational ed. We have teamed up with TCAT Dixon. They will be on campus if this new building comes through, and they will be offering a practical nurse program here, as well as a CNA program and a graphics arts program. So it's a nurse assistant program. So anyway, we're excited about that and excited about the opportunity, and we certainly appreciate the support you all give us. We understand what has occurred through the years, and we're very hopeful that it will come this year. We've had an increase in the fall of students. We've got another increase this spring. We are at max, and we do not want to turn students away, but we're growing in that direction, that we just don't have the room in the classes that they need. So it's a very important thing. And I also want to say in reference to the GIVE Act, I don't know that you know, but it's been in the papers, we teamed up with the school system, the Williamson County Schools, put in for a GIVE Act that will be working, have a bus that will go around, or not necessarily a bus, but a van, and working with cyber defense in all of our schools. So we're very appreciative of the GIVE Act and what that's allowing us to do with the secondary schools.
Columbia State's certainly been growing quickly since, especially since the move over here to the new facility. And of course, we always, I think every time I come in here, I think of our late Representative Charles Sargent that was so instrumental in making that happen. It sounds like now is the governor's bill, boy, what do you call the majority leader, but carrying the governor's sponsors. Now you're going to have to try to fill those shoes, Jack, and Brandon and Sam on the House Finance Ways and Means Committee. We need you all to continue what's been going on here.
I want to brag on Glenn for a minute too. I know we had a meeting early towards the end where there were some appropriations and some money being allocated. And I asked for some specific money going in some different places. And Glenn called me in with a big smile and said, you know, good news, Brandon. We got a lot of money for Columbia State. I was confused because, you know, we had worked on that and that was part of the initiative, but Glenn really did a good job. And I believe your children, one of your children came attended Columbia State. So in his role, Glenn was instrumental in securing some of that funding and really worked hard and championed and did a lot of work with that.
Thanks.
The new building is number 6 on the list. It is number 6 on the list. So that's in terms of priority. So if we can fund 6 or 7 or 8, it'll get done. If we can only fund 4 or 5, it'll roll to next year. As I told you earlier, Janet, I'm cautiously optimistic. Okay, there's a chance. I'm saying there's a chance that we'll get it this year.
In our contacts with the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, they understand our push and emphasis on this critical need.
Great, good deal. BEP formula is always fodder for a meeting like this because if you look at the numbers, Williamson County gets less percentage of the state government than many of the rural counties. It's because of the Cool Springs Galleria and the surrounding shopping district that generates so much retail sales that that's what drives a lot of the BEP formula. But you all have made a huge effort the last couple of years to find a way to fund our high growth districts like Williamson County that have the capital needs to build new schools, which generally are not in the operating budgets of the schools. What do the prospects look like this year for those for that effort? Brandon?
We're going to keep chipping away at that, and I want to tell a quick story about one of the first meetings I had up there. I tell jokes sometimes that are not well received by people that study finance and all that, and we came into a meeting and I said, you know, in Williamson County we call BEP broken economic policy, and I thought the people would laugh, and one of the analysts in the back said, Representative, that's not your joke, you said that to the Tennessean. So they take their analysts very serious, and we need more money for Williamson County. But this is a very, very hard lift in the fact that the numbers in Williamson County are the best in the state, almost in every data point. Highest income, highest test scores. Every county in the state wants to be Williamson County. We're the leader, tip of the spear. We contribute more to the state and get less back than just about everybody. But with that is, you know, it's hard for us to sometimes, you know, we have AstroTurf at Franklin and some of our new schools love it. Love the fact that we have turf. We can prove on data that long-term that saves us money. But it's hard for us to argue with a representative from East Tennessee that says, you have AstroTurf on your football field. We put a $100 bag of seed on our field every year. So don't tell me you need more money. We do. We're not funded proportionally, but it is a uphill lift. It usually breaks about 70-30. The needs for Williamson County, we don't have a lot of people that will side with us to bring more money to the high growth districts. There's some bills in the works now, and we found there's a vein of funding that's not allocated that we're working on. But be patient with us and be grateful for the problem we do have in Williamson County, and that's the fact that we are sometimes put in a bad position because we are so blessed.
Glenn,
Let me piggyback on that, because in the past we've worked diligently just try to push it through because, in our words, it was fair. well, fair is a word that doesn't exist in the legislature. I had an interesting thing happen to me. I had two Democrats come to me yesterday and ask, Glenn, let's form a Middle Tennessee caucus because we need more money for our schools and growth. They also represent. And so our strategy, I've talked to these guys, our strategy is maybe switching the paradigm till we create an alliance of those schools that are growing fast. And let's become a united voice, because you can sell, as the slang goes, you can sell the dome off the Capitol if you get 50 votes in the House and 17 in the Senate. So we got to come together with 50 votes in the House and 17 in the Senate. That's going to be our key.
Now, there's probably no one in this room that knows how to count votes in the House better than you, Glenn.
Thank you.
And as we know, it's split somewhere between rural counties and urban counties.
And suburban.
And
It's
suburban.
kind of, Dave, I'd say it's three tribes.
Okay. How many votes do we have in each of those tribes now?
It's approximately a third, to be exact, on the House side, and I don't really know the Senate side, but on the House side, you've got about 28 to 30, what I call urban. They live in metro areas. But a lot of those guys swing to the suburban side as well, and we're in the low 30s, about 33, 34. And then the high 20s are rural. So it's about a third. And it is, each group has totally different needs, wants, desires, and thought process. And I emphasize thought process because I look at some of my peers and I think, how in the world did you come up with that conclusion?
Yeah. Sam, you're maybe the ultimate diplomat of the three here.
I am the oldest, okay?
Got a military background. I don't know how that figures in, but do you see any deals to be made? Is there a way to make some of this come together?
I agree with Glenn. On the urban, suburban, and rural, a lot of good bills get hijacked or taken away because one group, it hurts one group and helps the other and such. And so I think I see a good spirit of cooperation up there, and we will continue to work closely with the other chamber to get things done. I think we have a really good relationship between our speaker and the lieutenant governor. I think Cameron Sexton actually helped get McNally on his campaign years ago. So they have this deep relationship that goes back for years. And I think we can build on that. And I think we're very optimistic of what we can do this session. And I think we all look forward to working together.
Right. Well, go ahead, Brandon.
I also want to say is, something Charles and I talked about in depth was some of the goals for Williamson County are not short-term goals. Some of this we're going to work on for a decade. Yeah. And one of the initiatives that I've been real passionate about was putting the school resource officers in the schools across the state of Tennessee that don't have them. And everybody was a little perplexed in the fact that they said, well, you already have these. Why are you pushing so hard? Well, for one, it's the right thing to do. Two, for us to ever get more for Williamson County for that growth and for those new schools, we have to have alliances in these rural districts. Mm-hmm. So sometimes to get something down the road, you have to work really hard and give first. So we're giving and working really hard to secure those rural schools across the state. Tennessee is now at 73%, which is number one in the nation. The number two state is at 55%. So we're not leading the nation in this. We are lapping people. Not to say that we're done. We're nowhere near done. That means 1 in 4 schools do not have security. We're going to get there soon, and it's an initiative worth taking.
Housekeeping item there. Getting some feedback on Gwen's mic, so don't put your hand over it, Gwen. Just as a housekeeping, while we're taking a breather from issues here, we're about 20 minutes to go here, and I'm about a third of the way through the agenda I had on tap. But we will leave some time for questions from the audience. We are going to ask you to put those in writing, and Kel McDowell has some. No, we didn't bring the cards. Okay.
We didn't have any submitted questions, but in the future, please feel free to submit questions.
Okay. I thought we were going to take them from the audience, but we got plenty of things to cover, and I'm going to do my best to cover as much as we can this morning. And these gentlemen can, I'm sure, spend a few minutes after the show to answer any questions you might have. Glenn, you alluded to the fact that there are going to be some more efforts on education. Would it be on the voucher legislation, ESA legislation? What are you expecting there?
On the ESA, I expect the House, the Senate, and the governor, let's see if it works, what we put in place. We picked two school LEAs, dismal test scores, very poor results. So we're trying something to help about 7,500 students out of a state population of well over 1 million students. And let's just measure, let's see if it's successful. If it is, you may see us looking at how we can expand it, if it's successful and only on failing schools. If it's not successful, you'll see us look at something else. We can't continue to lose another generation of young people in failing schools, dangerous schools. And just because you live in a certain zip code, you should not be doomed to attend a failing school. And I have not seen, nor has anyone, I understand, seen the governor's agenda initiatives for the upcoming year. State of the State is Monday. And, but I do expect him to expand upon vocational education. I just don't know what yet.
Jack?
A week from Monday.
Are you at liberty to share any thoughts about vocational and what we should expect to see there?
Well, I think you'll see, just kind of building on what the governor has done, that the educational component is probably the one that we have the least intel or data on yet. Just so you know, the process, we convened, a week ago, Tuesday. So we start. Members are filing their bills right now. Our bill filing deadline for the House is February 5th. For the Senate, it's February 6th. Governor will give his State of the State February 3rd. And that's when he'll present his budget. So things will happen pretty quickly over the next couple of weeks. So no, I don't have really much to share to say about more educational things, other than what maybe you've heard the governor say just as he's been out and about in the state. But a lot about criminal justice reform, and then obviously the pro-life legislation.
Well, let's circle back to specifics next month then, after we do hear the State of the State message and get a little bit more. And the bill filing deadline will be, what, a couple of weeks? Yeah. So we'll know what's coming then. Nathan Bedford Forest bust, or y'all want to talk about that a minute? Brandon, you've kind of taken a lead on possibly moving the bust out of the Capitol building to a museum. You want to?
I don't know if stepping in something is called taking the lead sometimes. But I made a comment early in session that hit the paper and had to weigh in on that. To me, that bus is not about honoring history or rewriting history. There's been some that said, we're whitewashing and removing things. We've got a beautiful new state museum that we spent a lot of money, a lot of taxpayers' money to build. What was the price tag on that? Was it $150 million? $150 million of taxpayer money. And it's a beautiful building. It's a great place to tell stories and inform people of what happened and what didn't happen and tell a complete story. Those buses, where they're positioned, if you haven't been up there, you should come visit us one day. We have the Day on the Hill soon. Where these buses are positioned are between the elevators and where we work. And every activist that wants to come up to the Hill and talk about something, for some reason decided that's the place to sit and stand and scream and yell and throw things at members. And it is a distraction. And that story's not being told. What's happening is people are yelling, they're chanting, and it makes it almost impossible for us to do our job. And it's a security nightmare. So those buses, I would hope, get moved to somewhere where you can tell the story and tell the complete story, so you can tell the good and the bad. I mean, everybody always remembers the best thing you do and the worst things you do. Everything in between is forgotten. So My hopes would be that the people that love history and want to honor history will put those buses in a place that story can be told, rather in a place where people can chant things and throw coffee at people, because that I'm tired of. It's unacceptable, and it needs to stop. And for the members that are specifically have concerns that some of those buses, it's offensive to some people, and we need to take pause and be respectful. And the focus being on history, we're teaching the next generation here. I'm not focused on the rearview mirror 200 years ago. I'm focused on where we're going the next decade. Doesn't mean that I don't love the History Channel. Doesn't mean, well, I don't read books. I'm not going to make that up. I don't read history books. I look at financial spreadsheets. So I would hope that story is told in a place that it can be told. And that's not dishonoring history. That's just, to me, common sense.
Sam?
Well, there may be an opportunity here to tell more about this story. A lot of people, there's two other individuals that we could create bus for in the state of Tennessee. A lot of people, you heard of Andrews Air Force Base. Did you know Frank Andrews grew up about a mile from the state capitol, went to MBA, graduated from West Point, and was a three-star general when he was killed in 1943. He took Eisenhower's place as commander of all U.S. forces in the European theater. We do not honor him anywhere. Also, a lot of people don't know the story of Nathan Bedford Forrest III, the last Forrest in the line. He was a brigadier general in the United States Army Air Corps, killed in 1943, flying a B-17 against the Nazis, shot down, and he's buried in Arlington Cemetery. There's not a bus for him. Think about the opportunity this presents us, as he was saying, to put that in the context of history. And I'll tell you, I've talked to folks on both sides of this. There's a concern that if Forrest comes down, Farragut, Admiral Farragut, who was born in Tennessee and led the Union Navy during the Civil War, will stay. I think something should be done in concert together when you take, and there's an opportunity to honor these two other Americans that shows how far we had come since the Civil War, to his great-grandson who died, the first general officer in the European theater fighting Nazis.
Yeah. Brandon?
And this is probably going to be the controversial part as well. And I forgot to mention, but some of my more senior elders have stated, those are graven images of men. They're on a pedestal, and we have to look at those. But yet we have no crosses in our Capitol.
Glenn, you have known the more socially conservative group of state representatives probably better than anyone. How do you balance this conversation?
I think change is painful, but change is good. I'll be seeing this, it's a resolution. We don't have direct oversight over what the busts that are in the Capitol. It's the Historical Commission. But there'll be the committee I'm on Tuesday will have a resolution asking them to remove that, the bust. And I support that. But I'm kind of coming from the same vein as Brandon. There's 4 busts in there, and I think there's probably dozens of Tennesseans that need to rotate in there and rotate out. So it's not just Nathan Bedford Forrest I support removing, but all President Polk and President Johnson and Admiral Farragut, all those guys need to be rotated because there are many great Tennesseans, past and present, that we should somehow. There we go. And so that's where I'll be. Now, let's be clear, is even though it's a feel-good thing, this doesn't accomplish one thing. Tennessee and leaders in the state need to be focused on how do we help the next generation in the poor communities, the African-American communities, and for that matter, the Appalachia part of the state, be educated? How do we make strong families so we don't have children being raised in single parent households? That's the real problems. And if we want to solve the problems of society, we need to focus on that and less on statues.
Gotcha. Jack?
Yeah, so the way this works is that there's a Capitol Commission, and it's made up of, but from there it does go to the Historical Commission as well, so they're both involved in it. And the governor controls 7 of the 12 votes on the State Capitol Commission. either through citizen appointees or cabinet members that sit on that capital commission. So I expect that the governor has not weighed in yet, and the capital commission meets on February 5th, I believe, and so there will probably be some conversations about it at that time.
Okay. One more thing, too. A lot of folks don't know, we have a Tennessee Military Museum in the basement of the War Memorial Building. It's being renovated right now, and that's where we have the statues for the Korean War veterans, the Gulf War veterans, and the Vietnam War veterans. So that facility is going to be upgraded here in the near future.
Good, good. Drivers testing station lines. I've been hearing a lot about that here in Williamson County because of the increased demand for new driver's license because of the law that requires you to get a star on your driver's license. Do we have any hope of seeing those lines coming down?
We went to Murray County, actually, to get ours. Seriously. But they did up the number of folks to handle those. I encourage you, when you go in, go to the kiosk first, no matter what they tell you, and sign in there. It will expedite your services there. This is a federal requirement. We have been kicking this can down the road for years and years and years. And the biggest problem is people are not bringing the correct documents. And remember this, it doesn't mean your driver's license is no good next year in October if you don't have that star. October this year. You can still drive and it's still valid, but the problem is it's a federal requirement to have that verification, that star, if you're going into a federal building or to get on an airplane. But if you have the passport, a passport card, or a military ID, a retired military ID, any kind of federal identification, you can still get in on that plane, you can still get into that federal building. So I think there was a rush, people thinking their driver's licenses were no good, that the other forms of ID would not get them into the facilities or on an airplane. So I think I trust our Commissioner of Safety and to get this thing as we progress.
Who, by the way, the Commissioner of Safety is a friend of many in this room, our former sheriff, Jeff Long. So he wanted to be Commissioner of Safety. Hope he's liking it. No.
Jeff, if you're listening, we need to have you here with us next month.
No, he is doing a great job on it, and Sam articulated it properly. There was some incorrect reporting leading into this past October. The cutoff time is October 2020. But some people thought it was October 19th, so there was a big rush of people to the driver's testing stations. And you know how we all are. We all wait till the last minute, right? We procrastinate. But they are putting new people in the testing centers. Ours here in Williamson County is already overutilized. I mean, it's over capacity. So that was just a particular burden there. But they are putting new positions in and trying to get word out to people. Don't wait till the last minute. If you don't have a passport and you're going to be flying, you need to go get this done. If you have a passport, it's not as urgent.
Right. Sam, are you really going to let them shut down the post office at 5 Points?
My post office box was due, the payment for next month was due this month. And so I went down there and asked Tom, who runs it, the contractor, and I said, should I renew my post office box? He said, yes. So to me, that's a good sign, okay, for another year. It is a contractor-operated facility, and I understand that they are looking for a new contractor. It is so important to the heart of our downtown district. It's actually in Brandon's district, and mine is about 5 feet on the other side of the line. But I do my banking there, and I do have a post. I feel that they will work it out. Tom sounded optimistic, a new contractor will pick that up.
Okay, I just wondered. We really hardly even talked about transportation and roads. Sam, you mentioned it a few minutes ago. But if you'll help us remember what is on the plan that we're not seeing dirt turned yet, and any help that any of you could give us on that.
Okay, just real quick, there were several projects listed on the 3-year plan. One of the major ones that doesn't get a lot of attention is the interchange at Moores Lane and I-65. That's going to be a big big project. It's on the 3-year plan. From downtown Franklin to Duplex Road in Spring Hill, US 31 is on the 3-year plan. And of course, we all know that McCatcher, the southwest quadrant, will be done not this year, but next year. They're building an 1,100-foot-long bridge to cover across the Harpeth River twice. But also, I got to give a shout out to Spring Hill, what the city down there has done to work with the state and the federal government to get that I-65 interchange completed there. And also Long Lane. They feel they will have Long Lane improvements down to Duplex Road up to the new intersection there, or interchange on I-65 by 2024. And then also it will cross I-65 to Lewisburg Pike. So it's going to open up that entire area. They were able to divert $25 million to that project as a jump start, but they're moving along. It's in the construction phase. Now, that doesn't mean they're moving dirt, but they've already done the right-of-way, NEPAs, and preliminary engineering. But and of course,
Highway 96?
96 over on the east side is really looking good too. That's on the 3-year plan. That will connect from Triune over to 840. So we got our share of the money. Now it's going to take time, and if there's time for questions, there's a gentleman that knows a lot more about this than I do in the audience, so we can point him out afterwards if anybody's got any questions. Right, Kent?
We will look around here and see who he's talking about here momentarily. Jack, what about the southeast section of McCatcher?
Southeast section, so that's from 96 down to Columbia
Target,
Pike.
yes.
Yeah.
By our houses?
Yeah, that's it's on the 3-year plan, and if I could say,
Yeah, please, Chairman.
It's 2 lanes, and it's going a 3-year plan to add an additional 2 lanes to that. So
that is in the 3-year plan?
that is in the 3-year plan, and it's I want to say like a $54 million project. So McCatcher, in a couple of years, it will be a lot better. Now, a lot of people say, why don't you connect McCatcher from 31 over to 96?
Amen.
But what will happen is once they complete that interchange down in Spring Hill and the improvements on 31 and the bypass on 96, it will take a lot of need off for that connection in our lifetime, we hope.
Okay, we can talk about that.
You own property over there?
The barely touched on health care, welfare, things like that, and the governor has had a health care task force working for the past several months. Do we know anything about what is going to come out of that task force and what?
Yeah, a little bit. As everyone knows, it's a very complex subject matter, but a couple of things. Our rural hospitals are closing, at a fairly high rate. People say, well, you should have expanded Medicaid to save those rural hospitals. Well, hospitals lose money on Medicaid patients, right, on TennCare patients. So it's like the old saying, the car dealer says, I lose money on every job, on every sale, but I make it up in volume. It doesn't, that doesn't work very well. Rural health care, which the governor is very passionate about, as are we. We're blessed. We've got a great hospital here, and we're close to Nashville. We have great access to care. The concern we have in the rural communities is more about urgent care. Okay, the days of going to your local hospital okay, I'll wrap it up. The days of going to your local hospital down the street to get your appendix out or have a baby, they're gone. It's just not going to. You're going to have to go to an urban center probably to get those kind of procedures. But what do you need in the rural areas? It's urgent care. It's ER. If you're having a heart attack, you're in a car wreck, you have a stroke, you need that urgent care. And so a lot of it is figuring out how to provide emergency care. We can talk more next month about that.
I shouldn't have jumped off into such a deep subject.
With 2 minutes left to go?
With 2 minutes left to go, I kind of didn't look at the clock before I asked that question. My apologies. We've got tons of things to talk about next month and the next, and we really appreciate our gentleman from the Capitol Hill coming down and spending time to help us understand all the issues and why they're not so easy to make happen, and just really appreciate the time y'all put into this and the effort. Dr. Smith, Columbia State, Dr. Lampley, we appreciate the accommodations here, beautiful facility, and we certainly appreciate being able to have our meetings here. Appreciate Vanderbilt and AT&T for making a monetary contribution to helping make this happen. Community Coffee, is that our coffee sponsor? Again, Kel, and couldn't do it without the coffee here at 7 o'clock every morning. Kel McDowell, Nancy Conway, and the chamber staff, Griffin Wilcoxon, and who else? Jenna, we appreciate all you do to make us look good. Creed on WCTV and his TV crew make this look really good on TV and on the YouTube channel. So just if you wanted to take another look at it, pull it up on YouTube. You can see us there. And Tom, we appreciate WAKM making it happen on the radio every Friday. Y'all come back to see us next month. It will be the last Friday in February, and we'll look forward to continuing the conversations.
Thanks, Dave.